Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to Dot Debate. Today, we have a world-renowned international Islamic scholar with us, and we are lucky enough to have their presence with us. Let me give you a bit of introduction first. He was born in the Caribbean island of Trinidad in 1942. He's a graduate of the Alumnia Institute in Karachi, also studied at Karachi University, University of West Indies, Al-Azhar University, and a graduate of International Relations in Switzerland. Worked for several years as Foreign Service Officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Government of Trinidad and Tobago. Gave up his job in 1985 to devote his life to the mission of Islam. His call to prayer: come back to Quran, because Quran explains everything. And that in these testing times, Quran is the only source of our salvation. We would welcome Sheikh Imran Nazar Hussain. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Imran.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Sir, welcome to our program. Sheikh Imran, a few questions, sir. Firstly, your love affair with Pakistan, how did it start?
Which Pakistan are you talking about? Dawlat-e-Islami or Dawlat-e-Gulami? That's, on the one side there is a Pakistan we love, and on the other side there's a Pakistan which causes us to weep. To weep. That it is without doubt, at all, no doubt, that when the struggle was launched to get the British out, the Muslims of this subcontinent, their choice was for the British to be replaced by a model of a community based on the Khilafah. And so they created the Khilafat movement. And the Khilafat movement meant that when the British are gone, we will live in accordance with our deen, our Islam. That's the Khilafat movement. And so when Pakistan was born, it was born to fulfill this dream that we now want to live in accordance with our deen. To live in accordance with this deen is to live with the Quran. But this country has not lived with this Quran from day one to this day. This country has not lived with the Quran from day one to this day. And as a consequence, it's not a love affair. It's an affair of tears and of pain and anguish. And I have come to Pakistan in my old age to teach the Quran.
Excellent. I was about to ask you if it's the same Pakistan or not, but you have answered that. So,
the Pakistan that I came to as a student was only 17 years old. And this Pakistan is no more than 70 years old. And what has happened from that time to this time only confirms what I'm saying, that this country is not living with the Quran. When I arrived in Pakistan as a student I spent 1 year in Egypt at Al-Azhar at the age of 21, the most important institution of Islamic learning in the world. And I was there. And I left Al-Azhar to come here. I may have been the first to do that. So I arrived here at age 22. And at that time, I couldn't afford to travel by rickshaw. So we had to travel by bus to go to Sadar in Karachi, and the fare was something called chawanni. So to go and to come back was atanni, half of a rupee. And $1 at that time converted to 1 rupee and 75 paisas. And now today, after 70 years of this country, we are about to witness, maybe within a few years, $1, 175 rupees. So how much longer do we have to wait before we can recognize what is bogus and fraudulent, the money we are using, and have the integrity to call a spade a spade? Why are you so afraid to say? I'm now speaking to the Islamic movements in this country who would believe that they do know Islam. Why are you afraid to say of the money we are now using in the world, the paper money, which is being replaced with electronic money, and then cryptocurrencies and the petrodollar, and then tomorrow one universal currency for all of mankind? What kya bimari hai? Why can't you recognize it is not only bogus and fraudulent, it is not only a vehicle of exploitation and impoverishment, it's a rope around your neck. It is taking you to slavery, and therefore it's haram. But I can't get them to say it's haram. Even when, I won't mention his name, a very charming man, the head of a very important Islamic movement in this country, a learned and intelligent man, I won't mention his name, and I sat for 1 hour with him. He didn't know the subject of monetary economics. But when I explained it to him, he stood up after 1 hour. He said, "This, ye to dhoka hai." So then I asked, "Is it haram?" No. Until Mufti says it's haram, I can't say so. So what has happened in all of these years is that while the poor of this country are descending into slavery, Dawlat-e-Ghulami is here. They still cannot say that this is haram. This is pathetic.
Right. Sheikh Imran, it will be very refreshing if you could share some thoughts regarding Dr. Israr and the work he has done.
I have only good things to say about Dr. Israr Ahmad. I have only good things to say. I consider him to be a man of great integrity, a great dedication, and great courage, and who, within the limits of the methodology that he lived with, who did the best that he could do. I was very happy when I was based in New York, and he came to New York, and I met him again. But prior to meeting him in New York in the 1980s, I met him, in the 1990s I met him in New York, but in the 1980s I met him for the first time in Karachi. And I invited him to my home, and my wife cooked a biryani.
Okay, excellent.
And my mother-in-law, who was the daughter of Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, rahimahullah, the sister of Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani. My mother-in-law was alive at that time, and she came to the home, and Dr. Israr, he ate the biryani. He enjoyed it. He would get back to Lahore and he wrote about it. And he sat down with my mother-in-law, the daughter of Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, rahimahullah, and they had a long chat. And he spoke, he said about Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, the Sufi Sheikh. He admired the magnetism of his personality. This is his language, yeah. And so I knew him even before we met in New York. And I was already admiring him in his work. But when he came to New York, I got an introduction, a taste of his organizational skill, what he had achieved, and before him Maulana Abul Ala Maududi rahimahullah, that these men had succeeded magnificently in establishing a jama'ah with discipline, beautiful organizational skill. And I was impressed with what they had done, because I didn't see the Sufis doing that. And then he put pressure on me. He wants me to come to Pakistan. He wants me to come to Pakistan. And he wants me to learn the Urdu language. Imran, you have to learn Urdu. And while I was here in Rawalpindi, I then decided to join the Tanzim. And it was a wonderful experience. The members of the Tanzim, the Rufaka, they welcomed me. It was a fraternity, and I enjoyed being a member of the Tanzim. And he even then went on to say, Imran, I want to appoint you as the Amir of Tanzim of Islami for the whole of North America. This is what he said to me. But then later on, there was a problem pertaining to methodology. And that stood between us. The methodology which I employed for the study of eschatology. I had not as yet written Jerusalem in the Quran, as yet, which is my first book on eschatology. But I was already lecturing on eschatology, yes. And because of methodology, our views were different. And I believe if I had been allowed to continue to lecture on this subject, then there would have been some problems. There would have been some problems. And so we parted ways, but even though he was no longer the Amir, and I was no longer a member of the Tanzim, my heart was still with the Tanzim. My heart was still with the Tanzim. And I still have only good things to say about Dr. Israr Ahmad and about the Tanzim.
Thank you, sir. These are precious thoughts that you have shared. We will cherish them for sure. Sheikh Imran, now if we get on to the world affairs and the bigger picture. So I would like to ask you, for example, after World War I and II, we saw the rise of nation states. And then lately we have seen the world moving into becoming a global village. So how do you see the world at this stage in terms of where is it heading now?
I have come to Pakistan not as a political scientist, not as an economist, and not as a cricketer, although I'm from Trinidad, Brian Lara's country. I've come to teach the Quran. And I want to stick with this. So if I am to comment on the state of the world today and which direction it's moving and what lies ahead, the answer has to come from the Quran. But the Quran is comprised, and this is Allah's wisdom. I don't think Washington is happy with this. That the Quran is comprised of those verses which are plain and clear. and those verses which have to be interpreted. The ones which are plain and clear, this is the heart of the book. So the heart of the book is available for everybody. But there is another part of the book that you cannot penetrate unless you can interpret it. And we have a classical case of this part. It's called ayat mutashabihat. Allah sent down revelation, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, eat and drink during the nights of Ramadan until the white thread of dawn is distinct from the black thread. The language is clear and plain. Thread, you fly a kite with a thread. And the Prophet ﷺ offered no commentary on this. So one companion took a white thread and a black thread, put it underneath his pillow. And in the morning after he took his sahri, he took the white thread and black thread trying to figure out when does the fast begin. He had difficulties. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ, and it is at this moment and not before. This is strategically important. At this moment that the Prophet ﷺ interpreted the ayah. An interpretation is ta'wil, an explanation is tafsir. So he gave it ta'wil. He says, when Allah spoke about the white thread and the black thread, He didn't mean it literally. No. He meant that when the light of the day is distinct from the darkness of the night, at that time the fast will commence. So there are verses of the Qur'an which have to be interpreted. But when you interpret the Qur'an, remember, no one can confirm that it is correct until Allah, except Allah. No one can confirm that an interpretation is correct other than Allah. That does not mean you should not interpret. Of course you must interpret. And to interpret you have to think. And to interpret you also have to use a methodology for the study of the Qur'an. And that was where there were differences between my teacher, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, and Dr. Israel Ahmad. But that's another subject. Methodology for the study of the Qur'an. So you have to have a knowledge of how to study the Qur'an if you want to interpret. So Allah has given many verses of the Qur'an like that, which have to be interpreted. And if you want to recognize the reality of the world today, and that which has just taken place in the past, the last 300 years or so, and if you want to know where we are going, it is here in the mutashabihat that you will find the answer. I'm sorry that my answer is so long. But the Qur'an tells us that it explains all things. So if the Qur'an explains all things, where is the explanation for what's happening in the world today? Over the last 300 years, a new actor has appeared on the stage of the world. He was never there before. The Chinese civilization never saw him. The Babylonian never saw him. The Aztec never saw him. Where did he come from? And as soon as he appeared on the stage of the world, with irresistible power, he swept the world. And he took control of power all over the world. This never happened before in history. It's the first time it has ever happened. And this new actor on the stage of the world not only has irresistible power, no combination of rivals can resist him, but he uses power to oppress and to corrupt. And he has an obsession with Jerusalem. An obsession with Jerusalem. And he keeps on waging wars relentlessly and assuming more and more control over the world until he brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to regain it, to reclaim it as their own after 2,000 years of exile. And then a state of Israel reappears in Jerusalem after 2,000 years. So it seems to me as though history is moving in a direction connected with Jerusalem, not Chicago. But then where is the explanation in the Quran? I wrote Jerusalem in the Quran 20 years ago, and they know it, and they have read it. And yet there is pathetic silence from those who should be teaching the Quran. We know where we are today. When the Quran speaks, for example, and says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ انطلقوا إلى ظل ذي ثلاث شعب. Proceed to a shadow with three parts. When the three parts are over, the shadow will disappear. I say, and Allah knows best. The shadow is Dajjal. And the three parts have appeared to me already in the world of world affairs. There's Pax Britannica, and now Pax Americana. And we are now located, in answer to your question, at that moment in time when a transition is taking place from the second part of the shadow to the third. And their plan is for a Pax Judaica to replace Pax Americana. There are thousands in the world now who agree with this. I have been teaching this for 20-something years. But those who claim that they have Islamic authenticity in their organizations and their knowledge, they are pathetically silent.
So Sheikh, we can then, based on what you have said, we can say that we are in that time of Dawda Fitan, and to be more precise, right in the middle, or maybe at the third stage of Fitna Dajjal, as we call it. So in terms of the chronological order, is this the final phase? And what do you expect next?
No, this is not the final phase. The Quran speaks of a shadow with three parts. And the shadow, when it appeared with big wars to create Pax Britannica. And then for the transition from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana, there were two world wars. Obviously, you cannot have the transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica without big wars. And our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam prophesied the Malhama, the Great War. And Christian and Jewish eschatology speak of Armageddon. And Suratul Isra of the Quran, Allah says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ وَإِن مِّن قَرْيَةٍ إِلَّا نَحْنُ مُخْلِقُوهَا قَبْلَ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُوهَا عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا كَانَ ذَلِكَ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَسْطُورًا. There is not a single town or city that we will not destroy. And those who escape destruction will be punished with a great punishment before Qiyamah. And this is inscribed in the book. This great destruction that is coming has not as yet come. This malhama has not as yet come. The Prophet ﷺ told us that 99 out of every 100 who fight in this war will be killed. There's never been a war like that in all of human history. It has to be a war using weapons of mass destruction to kill 99 out of 100. So the malhama has not as yet occurred, but we are now at that moment in time when that is the next event to occur. My students know it. The Christians and the Jews know it. There are millions and millions and millions around the world today who know it. A big war is coming. And that's the malhama. What about those who are supposed to be teaching the Quran, those who say, we are the Islamic movement? Why are they not talking about it? What is the cause of their ominous silence? I've come to Pakistan to ask this. But now then, what did our Prophet say about the future? He said that 7 years after the Great War, the conquest of Constantinople would take place. Let me quote the hadith so they have no way to escape. He said, Umran Bayt al-Maqdis kharabu Yatrib. That when Jerusalem is center stage, built up, at that time look at Yatrib, which is Medina, in forlorn desolation. He's giving a timeline. Kharabu Yatrib Khurujul Malhama. That when Yatrib is in forlorn desolation, the next event is the Malhama. Khurujul Malhama Fathul Constantinia. That the next event to take place after the Malhama, whether they like it or they don't, is the conquest of Constantinople. And so to come with this nonsense that the prophecy of the conquest of Constantinople was already fulfilled 600 years ago, they took that out of Disneyland. That's not scholarship. That's schoolboy stuff. The conquest of Constantinople, prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, occurs only once. He didn't say twice. He said once. And it has not as yet occurred. And it will occur only after the Malhama. So we know that while the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ today is in chains, if you have one kulta shalwal and you have a beard, you're a terrorist. Huh? So when I come to Pakistan, I put on kulta shalwal and I keep my beard. So, while we are in such a desperate situation today, the Ummah, just a few years after the Malhama, this Ummah is going to rise. And our Prophet praised that army. He says, لَتَفْتَهَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ. And he praised the army and he praised the commander. That is the next event that's coming. Washington can't stop it. NATO can't stop it. I used to think when I began lecturing on this subject 10 years ago at the International Islamic University in Malaysia that the conquest of Constantinople was meant to free the Bosphorus and the Straits of Dardanelles from NATO control so that the Russian Navy could pass through into the Mediterranean, and that's bad news for Israel. That analysis is still correct, but now I realize, no, that's not the most important. There are two alliances to emerge in Akhir Zaman, which is going to shake those who are responsible for bringing the Jews back to the Holy Land and bringing this bogus state of Israel. Shake them up. The first is the alliance between China and a post-Soviet Russia. That's already come into being. And the second is an alliance between the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and the Ummah of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. A Muslim world and a Christian world. And when we conquer Constantinople, I hope Pakistan is listening to me. When we conquer Constantinople, as prophesied by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the first thing we will do is to return Hagia Sophia, the Orthodox Christian cathedral of the Orthodox Christian world, which was their major cathedral for 1,000 years, until it was shamefully, disgracefully, and sinfully transformed into a masjid. And I choose my words with great care, because my words are based on the Quran. That cathedral will be returned to the Orthodox Christian world. And when we return it to them, the joy in their hearts, the tears in their eyes, the tears in the hearts of all those Christians is going to seal the alliance. Then he went on to say, Fathul Constantiniya Khuruj ad-Dajjal. It is after this alliance takes place, after the conquest of Constantinople, and the two alliances are in place. Russia and China will survive the Great War that's coming. The West will not. Russia and China will survive. I don't think there will be any air force after the Great War, but you still have a navy. And the alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians, then when Dajjal now appears, the shadow is gone. Pax Judaica is finished. And Dajjal appears in person. The stage is set. They were taken for a ride. Dajjal took them for a ride. And it's the last ride on which they'll ever go.
Right. So, Sheikh, if we look at the latest pandemic, which we call COVID-19, how does that fit into the bigger picture of end times or Islamic eschatology?
The virus was meticulously planned in advance, was manufactured in a laboratory, and it represents the use of biological warfare to fulfill political agendas. Shall I repeat that? Dajjal has given a spectacular demonstration of the fact and reality he already rules the world. If you don't have the eyes to see that, or the courage to say it, I have the eyes to see it, thank Allah. And I don't lack the courage to say it. this is Dajjal's work, this virus. So I call it tamasha. You have a lovely word in Urdu for it, tamasha. It's something worthy of Disneyland. Medical science is inadequate to analyze this. You need more than medical scholarship to study this virus. Okay? And I have two more comments to make. If you cannot perform the salat in accordance with the sunnah, what should you do? The Prophet ﷺ never gave us that another condition of salat that you must wear face mask. If you introduce this as a condition that you're not allowed to join the salat without this, you are committing bid'ah. Number two, and you know it, all of Pakistan knows it, that the Prophet ﷺ said, if you're standing in the saf and you leave a space, he said, what did he say? Shaitan will come and stand in that space. So now when you stand in salat and this, they call it social distancing. You leave enough space now for a dozen shaitan to stand in that space. Don't you have any sense? Have you stopped thinking? Huh? So I will never perform my salat that way. So I don't have to answer to Allah on Judgment Day. So I have to say these words, not to them because they never listen to me. They shut the doors of the masjid on me. They consider me to be a threat. But to the others, the young ones who are listening to me, thank Allah, there are so many in Pakistan now who are listening to me. I thank Allah for that. And not only sons, daughters as well. Daughters as well are listening. I say to them, when you cannot perform the salat the correct way, do not corrupt it, suspend it. Do not corrupt the salat, rather suspend the salat until such time as you have the freedom to conduct the salat the correct way.
Sheikh Imran, if we build a little more on the topic you just touched, the transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica, you talk of the big wars. What I want to relate and ask you is that the world economy is also in shambles. Do you think that an economic collapse is also imminent and is pegged to the crisis which we are looking ahead?
The American economy should have already collapsed long ago. The US dollar should have collapsed long ago. But they have a special hospital and they put the economy on a life support system in this hospital. And the US dollar, the intensive care unit. And somehow or the other, they have managed to keep the American economy alive when it should have been dead long ago. And they are keeping the US dollar alive. It's miraculous that they're managing to do it. I think it's just, like you put when you have a cut, you put, what is it called, the plaster there?
The Band-Aid?
Band-Aid. This is a Band-Aid economy now. A Band-Aid economy in Europe, in the United States, elsewhere. And they are under attack. Their economic system is under attack today because China deceived them. The Soviet Union had deceived them. They're not going to like what I'm saying. The Soviet Union deceived them with consummate deception. They also deceived me, incidentally. The Soviet Union deceived them with consummate deception. I don't have the time to explain it. But when I went to Russia and I was speaking ill about the Soviet Union, then the Russians stopped me. And they told me things I didn't know. You see? Then I realized Allah can use a zalim to fulfill his purpose. Allah can use a zalim to fulfill his mission. That was the Soviet Union. And China deceived them. They thought China will never make an alliance with Russia. They thought so. They thought that China will always be a communist state and an atheist state. So we can't go wrong with China. So they closed their eyes and they put on the face masks on top of their eyes and they went to China. And they did business with a Chinese businessman. And the Chinese businessman outsmarted them. And today, China holds the economy in its hands. China holds the economy today in its hands. And China is posing the most formidable challenge ever to their economy. The monetary system is also in peril. And China can bring it down. Okay? But the Chinese are good businessmen, and they're watching. But China will not bend its knee before those who want to rule over. I hope Pakistan is listening. China is a proud civilization. China will never bend its knee to the oppressor. And they are the oppressors. Imam al-Khomeini, rahimahullah. And there are those who want to cut my throat because I said rahimahullah for Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini, rahimahullah, is a leader of a leader who pointed his finger straight in the face of Washington and said, "You are Shaitan al-Kabir." That's a leader. So Iran is never going to bend its knee to an oppressor. China will not do it. Iran will not do it. Korea will not do it. And Russia will not do it. So where is Pakistan? Where is Pakistan? Is it not time to have that kind of a integrity? The economy is now in peril. But I prefer to make my comments on the monetary system. China, for example, offered a deal to Saudi Arabia. The IMF says you cannot use gold as money. And that is shirk. If you make haram what Allah has made halal, that is shirk. Let me repeat it, so they will listen to the Islamic movements. If you make haram what Allah has made halal, that is shirk. The International Monetary Fund has made haram what Allah made halal, that is shirk. And when you join the International Monetary Fund, you are joining in the shirk. I hope they can understand. So this monetary system which came out of Bretton Woods and the IMF, which has made the Western world richer and yet richer, beyond their wildest dreams, which then transformed into the petrodollar monetary system. And they're growing rich, filthy rich, and our people descending into slavery, Dawlat-e-Gulami. Who is challenging it? Who is challenging it? Is it the Darul Uloom? Is the Darul Uloom challenging this system of monetary oppression? No. I have anger inside of me, because I've been teaching this subject for 20, 25 years now, and they wouldn't listen to me. So now, goodbye. I don't have time for you anymore. I'm moving forward. You can stay where you are. This monetary system is now being challenged. Not by any Maulana or Mufti. Not by any Darul Uloom. It's being challenged by China. China is leading the challenge against an oppressive monetary system. Where is the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Allah gave us this mission. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. That you should set the example for mankind. It is China. Communist China leading the challenge against that monetary system. But China couldn't do it on its own. So China made an alliance with post-Soviet Russia. And guess what India did? While we eating our biryani and going to sleep. India put one foot in Wall Street and one foot here in BRICS. India is in BRICS. It's China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. Well, Brazil is gone. And South Africa is wobbling. And China is kabhi idhar. Sorry, India. But China is still there. So what is happening in the economy and what is happening in the monetary system is now related to a challenge which has now come from China, which is an economic giant, and which has the means to challenge the monetary system. I think that's enough.
Sure. Right. So Sheikh Imran Hussain, just to build a little more, you spoke about the cryptocurrencies. Now, there is an argument out there that the cryptos are an antidote to the dominance of world central banks and to the control of their authority on creating money. So it's considered as, a solution. So because it's unregulated. So is crypto the currency of future? What is your take?
It is a valid observation that the cryptocurrencies are unregulated. They're not under the control of central banks and so on. It is a valid argument, a valid observation that cryptocurrencies pose a risk or a challenge to the monetary system. That's correct. But what is missing in this analysis, where did the cryptos come from? The cryptos have come from the same people who created this monetary system. They create the cryptos. Why have they done this? Answer, eschatology tells you that you cannot have the transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica unless you have the same system of change from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana. With Pax Britannica you had the sterling pound as the international currency. But when Pax Americana was to come, then what happened in Bretton Woods? In Bretton Woods, John Maynard Keynes had to accept that the time was gone for the British pound. And the American delegation at Bretton Woods was successful. That the US dollar was now established as the international currency in replacing the sterling pound. This was a momentous change. And then Bretton Woods set the stage for the IMF and the World Bank and so on. And so now we are located at that moment of transition from the second part of the shadow, Suratul Mursalat, to the third part of the shadow, which is also in the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari about Dajjal, that one day which will be like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week, 3 stages. We are now located in that moment of time when there's a transition taking place from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. But no university in the world will teach this, I tell you surely. So this transition cannot take place without a component connected with monetary economics. We know the US dollar has to be removed and replaced. But they don't want a crash. Dajjal is not a fool. Dajjal wants to bring about the transition without any dislocation and disruption. So he wants to give the US dollar what is called a soft landing. So it is an incremental attack on the monetary system, cryptocurrencies, so that eventually the US dollar will just fade away gently, and the movement towards one universal currency for all of mankind, and therefore Khuda Hafiz to the Pakistani rupee. Let me repeat that. Khuda Hafiz to the Pakistani rupee. No, they won't arrest me, don't worry. Khuda Hafiz to the Pakistani rupee. This transition to one universal currency for all of mankind must take place in an orderly way. And that's why cryptocurrencies have come.
Right. Sheikh Imran, you've spoken about the big wars, which are very near now. Iqbal also saw it, and as he says, "Aankh jo kuch dekhti hai."
What he said?
As he said, "Aankh jo kuch dekhti hai, lab pe aa sakta nahi. Mehve hayrat hoon ke duniya kya se kya ho jayegi."
Translate. No, my audience listening around the world want to know what he said. You have to translate it.
Right. So what Iqbal is saying is that the way he is looking at things and the way they are transpiring, he cannot bring that on his lips, so he cannot narrate it. But he is surprised as what he is seeing, the world will not be the same anymore.
Oh yes, momentous change is coming to the world. Yes, that is, Iqbal is correct on that.
Right.
But I don't find an eschatology in Iqbal. No. I do not find, I find in fact that Iqbal has rejected, and Iqbal is a great scholar, I consider him my teacher. Oh yeah, I'm not fit to even touch his toes. This man is such a great scholar. So if I offer a critical comment, that does not mean that Iqbal is any less than what he is. Okay? This is not any malicious comment. Iqbal declares that all the ahadith on Imam al-Mahdi are all fabricated. All fabricated. He rejects belief in Imam al-Mahdi, indicating that Iqbal does not know Islamic eschatology. Iqbal does not believe that Nabi Isa alayhi salam will return, but this is being hidden. Iqbal does not believe in Dajjal, Dajjaliyat, but this is being hidden, swept underneath the carpet today. So it's difficult to find the evidence, okay? So Iqbal does not have an Islamic eschatology, but there is no more eloquent voice and more powerful voice in defending Islam against the challenges which have come from modern Western civilization than Iqbal. The most dangerous challenge of all which has come from the West is the challenge in the world of knowledge. It's called epistemology. And the first two chapters of the reconstruction of religious thought in Islam is the best answer to the epistemological challenge of the West, ever written by anyone. So, it is not correct to say that Iqbal is anticipating the Great War, the Malhama. No, that's not correct.
So what would be, Sheikh Imran Hussain, your advice for Muslims of today? What is the most important duty for us to perform in these
I am
conditions?
happy you asked that question. What is our most important duty as a Muslim today? Before we answer that, it is necessary we must recognize that the Quran is al-haqqul yaqeen. I want secular Pakistan to listen to me. And I want that Pakistan which is so hypnotized by the feminist revolution, listen to me. If you have the time to listen to me. This is Imran talking to you from Islamabad. The Quran tells us that in this Quran there is something called al-haqqul yaqeen. What is al-haqqul yaqeen? The modern Western world says there is no such thing as al-haqqul yaqeen. They dismiss that. The Quran says this is absolute truth. Absolute truth. So when you accept that this Quran is the word of the one God, whether you understand it or you don't, whether you're comfortable with it or you are not, the head must bow before the Quran. That is absolute truth. If you do not accept that the Quran is the word of God, that's a different matter. But you must identify yourself so we know who you are. So once you know that the Quran is absolute truth, then Pakistan can only have a future if Pakistan is faithful to the Quran. And if you betray the Quran, you deserve the fate that awaits you. Don't cry. If we are to return to the Quran, so that the Quran can provide us the future and protect us in the present, guide us for the future. The way to the Quran is that you must study the Quran. And there's a methodology for study of the Quran. And this was where the parting took place between myself and Dr. Israr Ahmad on this issue. And may Allah have mercy on his soul. He was a great scholar. May Allah have mercy on his soul. Methodology for study of the Quran. But I was surprised and shocked. Nobody taught me this. You cannot study the Quran unless you are first reciting the Quran. When the Imam is reciting in Salah, that is tilawah. But when you are reciting for yourself, that is qira'ah. Qira'ah of the Quran must be done every day. Pakistan, your children, from the age of 4, must begin to learn to recite the Quran. By the age of 7, your child should be able to recite from anywhere in the Quran. Some of them already are Hafiz. By the age of 10, a child should be able to khatam the Quran every chant. You have to recite the Quran with the chant. Do you have my copy of my book? Quran or chant, anybody? No. Quran and chant, the Quran and the moon, I teach you the methodology for reciting the Quran, because we're not doing it the correct way. When the month of Ramadan begins in another 1 week or so, as soon as you see the moon of Ramadan, the first duty is, of course, to fast. What's the second? The second is to recite the whole Quran in Ramadan, because Allah Himself, He recited the whole Quran in Ramadan for Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ, and when we have recited the Quran, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, fattabi Quran, you must follow the way we have recited. This is the Quran, Surah Al-Qiyamah. So there is a way that Allah recited the Quran. To complete it, of course He did it through Jibreel alayhi salam. If it is to be completed over 1 month, 1 lunar month, then you have 1 juz or separa for the first day, the second day, and the third day, and so on. Which is the first juz? You're not allowed to chop the Quran. No. Allah has separated the Quran into surahs. A surah is a wall. Why did He do that? Did He give us the surahs for study? No. He did not separate the Quran into surahs for study. He says, Qur'anan, Surah Al-Isra, Qur'anan faraknahu litakra'ahu ala an-nas ala mukthin. That I have separated the Quran into these surahs for the purpose of recitation, not study. That it might be recited over intervals, the intervals being 1 month for him. So which is the first juz? When you see the moon of Ramadan, you can't chop the Quran, no. So you recite Surah Al-Fatiha and the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah. They can do what they want. They never listen to me. But you will listen. You recite Surah Al-Fatiha and the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah. Do not chop the Quran, which is Surah Al-Hijr. If you chop the Quran, Allah says, I'm going to question you on Judgment Day. And on the second day of Ramadan, Surah Al-Fatiha and the whole of Surah Al-Imran, until you complete the Quran. If you recite the Quran this way, I have much more to say on this subject, really, plenty more. If you recite the Quran this way, then you must follow up the next month and the next month, and all your life you will khatam the Quran every month, every month. Washington doesn't like this. You prefer that your children learn the English alphabet and speak in English, and you speak to the Khansama in Urdu. That's not the way. Let the children learn to recite the Quran. This is your best gift and your first duty. This is how we prepare. When you're reciting the Quran the way it ought to be recited, then you could study. And for that you need a methodology for study of the Quran. I've written 2 books. One, the methodology for reciting the Quran, and the other is the methodology for study of the Quran. And this comprises part of the almost 31 books now. And the good news, 31 books of mine have now been printed in Pakistan, alhamdulillah. People had to pay the cost, mail from Malaysia, and the prices in Malaysia. So we brought down the price from about 70-something thousand rupees for a complete set to 20,000. This is the good news I want to convey. And you can order my complete set of books. Just go to my website, imranhussain.org.
Right. So Sheikh Imran, we are close to the conclusion of our session. One last comment that I would like to have from you. At this point, are you optimistic?
It is because I am optimistic that I am here in Pakistan. Our Prophet made a prophecy, and I want to convey it in Urdu, so the audience around the world wait, and I'll translate it to English for you. He said, Meri ummat barish jaise. मैं ये नहीं जानता हूँ क्या पहले बारिश बेहतर है या आखिरी? Beautiful words. My ummah is like the rain. I don't know which shower is better, the first or the last. The last shower of rain has not as yet come. It is still to come. And when it comes, it's going to dazzle the world. From where will it come? It must have a component that is military, a component that is political, but most importantly, a scholarly component. So from where will that Islamic scholarship come? That is the scholarship of the last shower of rain. You might differ with me, and I don't mean to speak ill of others. No, because I have so many Arabs who are my students. But I don't see that last shower coming from the Arab world. That last shower of scholarship. I don't see it coming from Turkey and the Balkans. Not when you take Hagia Sophia and transform it to a masjid for a second time. I don't see it coming from Africa, although I love Africa. Sorry. And there's such thirst for knowledge in Africa. I'm supposed to go to Mombasa and then to Dakar in Senegal. I'm looking forward to that. I lived in Malaysia. I visited Indonesia so many times. I know it. I don't see it coming from that part of the world. So from where will that last shower come? I say it comes from Khidr, alayhi salam, through Maulana Rumi, through Iqbal, through my teacher, Maulana Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari. So that last shower will come from this part of the world. That's why I'm here.
Sheikh Ibran, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I wish you all best of luck.
Ameen, thank you.
Thank you, sir.